Maria Santos had never imagined that mopping floors in a military compound would lead to anything more dangerous than chemical burns from industrial cleaners. At 26, she had been working as a civilian contractor at the remote forward operating base in Afghanistan for 8 months, maintaining the living quarters and administrative buildings while American forces conducted their operations in the region. The base, designated Firebase Phoenix, sat perched on a rocky outcrop overlooking the Khyner Valley. It housed roughly 200 personnel, including a small team of Navy SEALs who operated out of a separate compound within the larger facility. Maria rarely interacted with the Special Operations Forces, catching only glimpses of them as they moved between their briefing rooms and the helicopter landing pad during the early morning hours. Her routine was predictable and comforting in its simplicity. She arrived each morning at 0600 hours, collected her cleaning supplies from the storage facility, and began her rounds through the base. The work was honest and paid well enough to support her younger brother's medical school tuition back in Texas. More importantly, it kept her close to the military community that had shaped her childhood as the daughter of a career Marine. Maria's father, Sergeant Major Roberto Santos, had raised her with military precision after her mother's death when she was 12. He taught her to shoot, to think tactically, and to maintain equipment with the same attention to detail he demanded from his Marines. When an improvised explosive device claimed his life during his final deployment, Maria channeled her grief into supporting other military families through her work as a contractor. The morning of October 15th started like any other. Maria arrived at her usual time, noting the increased activity around the SEAL compound. 3 helicopters had arrived during the night, their rotors still cooling in the crisp mountain air. She knew better than to ask questions about operational matters, focusing instead on her assigned areas while staying well clear of any restricted zones. As she worked through the main administrative building, Maria noticed Chief Petty Officer Jake Morrison emerging from the communications center. Morrison was the senior enlisted SEAL on the base, a veteran of multiple deployments who carried himself with the quiet confidence that came from years of high-stakes operations. He had always been polite during their brief encounters, occasionally asking about her father's service when he learned of her family's military background. "Morning, Maria," Morrison said, pausing near the entrance as she finished cleaning the lobby area. "Herbie might be getting some weather moving in from the northwest. Could get interesting around here." Maria recognized the casual tone that military personnel used when discussing sensitive information in mixed company. Weather was rarely just weather in a combat zone. She nodded respectfully, understanding that he was providing a subtle heads-up about potential operational activity. "I'll make sure to stay flexible with my schedule, Chief," she replied, wringing out her mop and preparing to move to the next building. Morrison studied her for a moment, his expression thoughtful. "You know, your old man would be proud of how you carry yourself around here. Not many contractors show the same level of situational awareness." The comment caught Maria off guard. She had always tried to blend into the background, completing her work efficiently while avoiding any appearance of overstepping boundaries. "Just trying to do my job and stay out of everyone's way, Chief." "That's exactly what I mean," Morrison said. "You understand this environment better than most. Keep that awareness sharp today." As Morrison departed for the SEAL compound, Maria felt a subtle shift in the base's atmosphere. The usual morning bustle seemed more focused, more urgent. Radio chatter increased in frequency, and she noticed additional security personnel taking positions around the perimeter. Her father's training kicked in automatically, heightening her attention to details that most civilians would miss. The first sign of real trouble came at 11:30 hours, when Maria was cleaning the second floor of the main barracks building. The distant sound of automatic weapons fire echoed across the valley, followed immediately by the distinctive whistle of incoming mortar rounds. Years of living on military bases had taught her to differentiate between training exercises and actual combat, and the sharp edge of fear in the shouting voices below confirmed her worst suspicions. Maria dropped her cleaning supplies and moved to the nearest window, keeping low as she assessed the situation. Smoke was rising from several points around the base perimeter, and she could see muzzle flashes from the ridgelines to the east and south. The attack was coordinated and well-planned, suggesting a significant enemy force had managed to establish positions within effective range of the base. The building's public address system crackled to life with the voice of the base commander. All personnel, this is Falcon 6. We are under attack from multiple directions. All non-essential personnel report to designated hardened shelters immediately. This is not a drill. Maria's mind raced through her options. The nearest hardened shelter was in the basement of the administrative building, roughly 200 meters away across open ground that was now being swept by enemy fire. The current building offered some protection, but its thin walls and exposed position made a poor choice for extended shelter. As she weighed her alternatives, the distinctive sound of rotorcraft engines filled the air. Through the window, she watched as the 3 helicopters that had arrived the previous night lifted off on the landing pad, banking hard to the south as they departed the immediate area. The sight of the aircraft leaving sent a chill through her chest, as it likely meant that planned operations were being scrubbed to deal with the current crisis. The sound of boots on the stairs interrupted her thoughts. Maria turned to see Chief Morrison ascending to the second floor, his rifle ready, and his expression grim. Behind him came 2 other SEALs she recognized from around the base, both carrying heavy packs and additional weapons. "Maria, what are you still doing up here?" Morrison demanded, his voice sharp with urgency. "You should be in a shelter by now. The route to the admin building is completely exposed." "Chief," she replied, pointing toward the window. "I can see at least 3 enemy positions with clear fields of fire across that approach." Morrison moved to the window and conducted his own assessment, confirming her observation with a professional eye. He spoke quietly into his radio, coordinating with other elements around the base while his teammates established security positions covering the stairwell and opposite approach. "We've got a problem," Morrison announced after completing his radio conversation. "The main relief force is at least 6 hours out, and we're taking casualties at multiple positions around the perimeter. The enemy has effectively isolated this base, and they're using mortars to keep our heads down while they maneuver closer." One of the other SEALs, a lean operator whose name tape read Garcia, looked up from his position near the stairs. "Chief, we need to get to the communications facility. If they take out our primary radio capability, we'll lose coordination with the incoming support." Morrison nodded, but kept his attention on the tactical situation developing outside. "The problem is getting there alive. They've got overlapping fields of fire covering every direct route, and the indirect fire is getting more accurate." Maria found herself speaking before she fully considered the implications. "Chief, there's a maintenance tunnel system that runs between most of the major buildings. It was installed during the base construction to protect utilities from weather and enemy action." All 3 SEALs turned to look at her with sudden interest. Morrison's expression shifted from surprise to calculation as he processed this new information. "You know the tunnel layout?" he asked. "I use them regularly for moving cleaning supplies and accessing utility areas," Maria confirmed. "There's a main trunk that runs from this building directly to the administrative complex, with branches that connect to the communications facility and most of the other critical structures." Garcia exchanged a meaningful look with Morrison. "Chief, if we can use those tunnels to move undetected, we could establish communications with the relief force and coordinate a more effective defense." The 3rd SEAL, whose name tape identified him as Walsh, was already checking his equipment and preparing for movement. "How long to get from here to the communications facility through the tunnels?" Maria considered the route carefully, visualizing the layout she had memorized over months of daily use. "About 15 minutes if we move carefully. 20 if we encounter any obstacles or need to avoid detection." Morrison made his decision with the swift certainty of an experienced combat leader. "Maria, I need you to guide us through those tunnels. This is way beyond your job description, and I understand if you're not comfortable with the risk. My father spent 30 years serving this country. Maria replied without hesitation. If I can help protect this base and the people on it, that's exactly what he would expect me to do. Outstanding, Morrison said. King is radioed to inform the base commander of their plan. Garcia, Walsh, we're going mobile through the tunnel system. Maria, show us the access point. Maria led them to a maintenance closet near the center of the building, where a heavy steel panel concealed the entrance to the tunnel network. The passage beyond was roughly 6 feet high and 4 feet wide, constructed of reinforced concrete, and lit by emergency lighting systems that cast strange shadows along the walls. As they began their underground journey, the sounds of combat above became muffled but still audible. Explosions shook dust from the ceiling, and the occasional rattle of small arms fire reminded them that their colleagues were fighting for their lives while they moved through the relative safety of the tunnels. Morrison took point position behind Maria, while Garcia and Walsh covered their rear and flanks. The SEALs moved with practiced silence, their weapons ready, and their senses alert for any sign of enemy infiltration into the tunnel system. How often do other personnel use these tunnels? Morrison whispered as they navigated a junction point. Rarely, Maria replied, keeping her voice equally low. Most people don't even know they exist. The base engineering section has access, but they usually only come down here for major maintenance issues. The tunnel system proved to be more extensive than the SEALs had imagined. Maria guided them through a network of passages that connected virtually every major structure on the base, providing protected routes for movement and communication even under direct enemy fire. As they moved, she pointed out access points and alternative routes that could be useful for tactical movement. Halfway to their destination, the group paused at a junction where multiple tunnels converged. Walsh, who had been monitoring radio communications, reported that the enemy assault was intensifying and that several perimeter positions were running low on ammunition. How much further to the communications facility? Morrison asked. About 8 more minutes through the main passage, Maria replied. But there's a shorter route through the utility section that would get us there in 5 minutes. It's tighter and requires crawling through a section where the ceiling is lower, but it comes up directly inside the communications building. Morrison considered the options while listening to the increasingly urgent radio traffic. Every minute counted in a situation like this, and the shorter route could make the difference between success and failure. Show us the utility route, he decided. Maria led them through a narrower passage that required them to move in single file. The ceiling height dropped to barely 4 feet in some sections, forcing the heavily equipped SEALs to crawl while carrying their weapons and gear. Despite the cramped conditions, they maintained their operational discipline, moving quietly and staying alert for any threats. As they approached the communications facility, the sounds of combat grew more intense. Heavy machine gun fire echoed through the tunnels, punctuated by the distinctive crack of sniper rifles and the deeper boom of shoulder-fired rockets. The base was clearly under serious pressure, and the need for effective communication with relief forces was becoming critical. Maria halted the group at a junction where she could see light filtering down from an access panel above. The communications facility is directly overhead, she whispered. The access panel opens into a storage room adjacent to the main operations center. Morrison moved forward to examine the access point, testing the panel mechanism and assessing their options for emergence. The panel was secured by a simple latch system designed to prevent accidental opening rather than to resist enemy action. Garcia, Walsh, prepare for immediate tactical movement once we reach the surface, Morrison instructed. Maria, once we're up there, I want you to find the best available cover and stay put until this situation is resolved. Understood, Chief, Maria replied, though she was already thinking about how she might continue to assist the operation. Morrison carefully opened the access panel, revealing a storage room filled with communications equipment and spare parts. The room was unoccupied, but voices could be heard from the adjacent operations center, along with the constant chatter of radio communications and the sounds of personnel coordinating defensive activities. The SEALs emerged from the tunnel with practiced efficiency, immediately establishing security positions while Morrison assessed the tactical situation. Maria followed, closing the access panel behind them and moving to a position where she could observe without interfering with their operations. Through the doorway to the operations center, they could see base personnel working frantically to maintain communications with various defensive positions around the perimeter. Multiple radio operators were handling different networks simultaneously, while staff officers plotted enemy positions and coordinated the defensive response. Morrison approached the senior communications officer, identifying himself and explaining the tactical situation as observed from their movement through the tunnel system. The information he provided helped fill gaps in the base's understanding of enemy positions and movements, contributing to a more effective defensive response. As the SEALs integrated into the communications facility's operations, Maria found herself in a unique position to observe the coordination of a major military defensive action. The professionalism and efficiency of the personnel impressed her, even as the situation continued to deteriorate around the base perimeter. The enemy attack was clearly more sophisticated than initially assessed. Intercepted radio communications suggested the involvement of foreign military advisors, and the coordination of fires indicated professional planning and execution. The base's defenders were holding their positions, but ammunition and medical supplies were running low at several critical points. Morrison's team quickly established communication with the relief force, providing detailed intelligence about enemy positions and recommending approach routes that would avoid the heaviest concentrations of enemy fire. Their knowledge of the tunnel system proved invaluable for coordinating movement of personnel and supplies between isolated positions. As the afternoon wore on, the intensity of the enemy assault gradually increased. Mortar fire became more frequent and more accurate, suggesting that the attackers had established forward observation positions with clear lines of sight to the base's critical facilities. Several buildings sustained direct hits, and casualties mounted among the defensive personnel. Maria watched the tactical display as red markers indicating enemy positions gradually moved closer to the base perimeter. The professional calm of the military personnel never wavered, but she could see the concern in their expressions as they dealt with an increasingly desperate situation. The turning point came when Walsh, monitoring enemy communications, identified the location of the forward observation post directing the mortar fire. The position was well concealed among the rocky outcrops to the northeast, but it was vulnerable to approach through a draw that was hidden from most of the enemy defensive positions. Morrison studied the tactical map, considering options for neutralizing the observation post. A successful mission would significantly reduce the accuracy of enemy indirect fire, giving the base defenders much-needed breathing room while they waited for relief forces to arrive. "We need to take out that observation post," Morrison concluded. "It's the key to their whole fire coordination system." Garcia nodded his agreement, but pointed out the challenges. "It's a difficult approach, and we don't know how many personnel they have in that position. Plus, we need someone who knows the local terrain well enough to guide us through that draw without being detected." Maria found herself speaking again, surprising everyone, including herself. "I've hiked through that area during my off-duty time. There's a goat trail that follows the draw and provides concealed movement almost to the base of that ridge. I could show you the route." The three SEALs exchanged glances, clearly considering the implications of involving a civilian contractor in a direct action mission. The tactical advantage was obvious, but the risks were enormous. Morrison made the decision that would change Maria's life forever. "Maria, this is going to be extremely dangerous. You'd be moving with us into direct combat against a professional enemy force. Are you absolutely certain you want to take this risk?" Maria thought of her father, of the Marines he had trained and led, of the principles he had instilled in her about service and sacrifice. The answer came without hesitation. "Chief, those people out there are fighting to protect this base and everyone on it. If I can help save lives, then that's what I need to do." Morrison nodded slowly, recognizing the same determination he had seen in countless warriors throughout his career. Outstanding. Garcia, prep her with basic tactical gear. We move out in 20 minutes. As the SEALs prepared for their mission, Maria found herself being equipped with body armor, a helmet, and basic communication equipment. The weight of the gear was substantial, but her years of physical labor had prepared her for the demands of carrying equipment under difficult conditions. Garcia provided a quick briefing on basic tactical movement and communication procedures, emphasizing the importance of staying low, moving quietly, and following directions immediately without question. Walsh checked her equipment and ensured that all buckles and straps were properly secured. Morrison reviewed the mission plan with the entire team, including Maria. They would move through the tunnel system to exit the base undetected, follow the concealed route through the draw, establish observation of the enemy position, and then conduct a precision strike to eliminate the forward observers directing the mortar fire. The plan was straightforward in concept, but complex in execution. Success would require perfect coordination, precise movement, and a significant degree of luck. Failure would likely result in their capture or death, along with continued casualties among the base's defenders. As they prepared to depart, the base commander approached Morrison for a final briefing. The relief force was still several hours away, and the defensive situation was becoming increasingly critical. The mission to eliminate the observation post represented the best hope for reducing enemy pressure until help arrived. Maria checked her equipment one final time, running through the mental checklist her father had taught her years before. The familiar routine of preparation helped calm her nerves and focus her mind on the task ahead. She was no longer a civilian contractor cleaning floors in a military facility. She was about to become a participant in combat operations against enemy forces. Morrison gathered the team near the tunnel access point, conducting a final equipment check and communication test. Each member of the team confirmed their readiness and understanding of their assigned responsibilities. The mission was about to begin, and there would be no opportunity for second chances or corrections once they committed to action. As they prepared to enter the tunnel system for their movement to the base perimeter, Morrison placed a hand on Maria's shoulder. Stay close, follow directions exactly, and trust your training. Your father would be proud of what you're doing today. Maria nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility and the honor of serving alongside these elite warriors. The quiet cleaning job that had brought her to this remote base was about to become something far more significant than she had ever imagined possible. The tunnel entrance beckoned ahead, leading toward an uncertain but vital mission that would test every skill and instinct she possessed. As they began their movement toward combat, Maria carried with her the memory of her father's training and the determination to prove worthy of the trust these SEALs had placed in her. The base's defenders continued their fight above ground, unaware that a small team was about to risk everything to give them a better chance of survival. The next few hours would determine whether Firebase Phoenix would hold against the enemy assault, and Maria Santos was about to play a crucial role in that determination. The tunnel system felt different during their second journey through its confines. Where Maria had earlier moved with the confidence of familiar territory, now every shadow seemed to hold potential threats. Every sound carried the possibility of discovery. The weight of the tactical gear pressed against her shoulders, a constant reminder that she was no longer a civilian observer, but an active participant in military operations. Morrison led the way this time, his movements precise and deliberate as he followed Maria's whispered directions through the underground network. Behind them, Garcia and Walsh maintained security, their weapons ready, and their senses alert for any indication that enemy forces had discovered the tunnel system. The route to the base perimeter required them to navigate through sections of the tunnel network that Maria had rarely used. These passages were older and more cramped, designed primarily for emergency evacuation rather than regular movement. In some areas, They were forced to crawl through spaces barely wide enough for a person carrying equipment, while the sounds of battle raged overhead with increasing intensity. As they moved deeper into the tunnel system, the construction changed from modern reinforced concrete to older stonework that predated the current base facilities. The emergency lighting became more sporadic, forcing them to rely on red-filtered flashlights that preserved night vision while providing minimal illumination. "How much further to the perimeter exit?" Morrison whispered during a brief halt at a junction point. Maria consulted her mental map of the tunnel system, calculating their progress against the distance remaining. About 10 more minutes to reach the exit point near the motor pool. From there, it's roughly 300 meters of open ground to reach the beginning of the draw. Walsh, monitoring radio communications, reported that the enemy mortar fire was becoming more accurate and frequent. Several critical facilities had sustained direct hits, and casualties were mounting among the defensive personnel. The mission to eliminate the forward observation post was becoming more urgent with each passing minute. The tunnel exit near the motor pool was concealed behind a maintenance shed that provided some cover from direct observation. Morrison carefully opened the access panel and conducted a visual reconnaissance of the immediate area, looking for signs of enemy infiltration or surveillance. The motor pool area was currently under sporadic small arms fire from enemy positions on the surrounding ridgelines, but the maintenance shed offered a covered approach to the base perimeter. Several damaged vehicles provided additional concealment, their twisted metal and shattered glass testament to the intensity of the ongoing assault. Morrison motioned for the team to remain in place while he assessed their options for crossing the open ground to reach the beginning of the draw. The terrain between their current position and their destination was relatively flat and exposed, offering little natural concealment from enemy observation. "We need to time our movement to coincide with friendly fire missions," Morrison decided after studying the tactical situation. "The base mortars are conducting counter-battery fire every few minutes. When they start their next mission, the enemy observers will be focused on protecting their own positions." Garcia confirmed the timing through radio coordination with the base fire direction center. The next friendly mortar mission would commence in approximately 3 minutes, providing a brief window of opportunity for undetected movement across the exposed terrain. As they prepared for their sprint to the draw, Morrison reviewed the movement plan with each team member. They would move in a staggered formation, with Maria positioned between Morrison and Garcia to provide protection while ensuring she could guide them to the correct approach route. The sound of outgoing mortar rounds signaled the beginning of the friendly fire mission. Morrison led the team out of the tunnel exit, moving rapidly across the open ground while the attention of enemy observers was focused on the incoming rounds impacting their positions. Maria found herself running harder than she had ever run in her life, her legs pumping to keep pace with the physically conditioned SEALs while carrying unfamiliar equipment. The body armor felt awkward and restrictive, but the protection it provided was essential given the enemy fire that was sweeping the area. They reached the mouth of the draw just as the friendly mortar mission concluded, diving into the concealment of the rocky terrain as enemy fire resumed its systematic coverage of the base perimeter. Maria's heart pounded from exertion and adrenaline, but she felt a surge of pride at having successfully completed the dangerous crossing. The draw was deeper and more complex than it appeared from a distance. The GO trail that Maria had followed during recreational hiking wound through a maze of boulders and narrow passages that provided excellent concealment from observation. However, the same features that offer protection also created potential ambush sites where enemy forces might have established security positions. Morrison established a brief security halt while the team caught their breath and assessed the route ahead. The trail was barely visible in some areas, requiring Maria's knowledge of the terrain to identify the correct path through the rocky maze. "The trail follows the left side of the draw for about half a mile," Maria whispered, pointing toward the route she remembered from her previous hikes. "It stays below the ridgeline on both sides, so we should be concealed from observation unless they have people actually positioned in the draw itself." Garcia moved forward to conduct reconnaissance of the immediate area, checking for signs of enemy presence or recent activity. The rocky ground showed little evidence of passage, but he remained alert for tripwires, improvised explosive devices, or other defensive measures that sophisticated enemy forces might have employed. Walsh maintained communication with the base, providing periodic position reports and receiving updates on the tactical situation. The enemy assault was continuing to intensify, with probing attacks testing multiple sections of the defensive perimeter. The need to eliminate the observation post was becoming more critical with each passing hour. As they began their movement up the draw, Maria found herself drawing on skills and knowledge she had never expected to use in a combat situation. Her familiarity with the terrain allowed her to identify the safest routes through the maze of boulders, while her understanding of local weather patterns helped predict how shadows and wind would affect their concealment. The Goat Trail proved to be an excellent route for tactical movement. Centuries of use by local herders had worn a path that followed natural concealment while avoiding the most difficult terrain. The trail's meandering route added distance to their approach, but it kept them hidden from observation while providing multiple escape routes if they encountered enemy forces. Halfway up the draw, Morrison called a halt to assess their progress and confirm their approach to the target area. Through his binoculars, he could observe the ridge where intelligence indicated the enemy observation post was located. The position was well chosen, offering excellent views of the base while being difficult to detect from ground level. "I can see why they picked that spot," Morrison observed quietly. "It's got clear lines of sight to most of our critical facilities, and it's positioned where our own observation posts can't get a good angle on it." Maria studied the ridge through her own eyes, comparing what she could see with her memory of the area from previous hiking expeditions. "Chief, there's a secondary trail that leads up to that ridge from the backside. I've never hiked it myself, but I've seen goat tracks that suggest it's passable." Garcia examined the alternative approach route, nodding as he identified the features Maria was describing. "That could work for our withdrawal route if we need to avoid returning the way we came. It would put us on the backside of the ridge system, away from most of the enemy positions." The team continued their movement up the draw, maintaining careful spacing and moving as quietly as possible across the rocky terrain. The SEALs' training in mountain warfare was evident in their smooth, efficient movement, while Maria drew on her experience hiking in similar terrain to avoid dislodging loose rocks or creating noise that might alert enemy sentries. As they approached the upper end of the draw, the sounds of combat from the base became more distant, replaced by the natural sounds of the mountain environment. The contrast was surreal, the peaceful setting of rocks and sparse vegetation providing a stark backdrop to the life and death struggle taking place just a few miles away. Morrison signaled for the team to halt as they neared the final approach to the ridge. The observation post was located somewhere in the rocky outcrops above them, but its exact position remained unknown. Standard tactical doctrine called for careful reconnaissance to identify enemy positions, numbers, and defensive preparations before attempting any direct action. Walsh moved forward to establish an observation position where he could study the ridge through high-powered optics. The process was painstakingly slow, requiring him to examine every rock, shadow, and irregularity that might conceal enemy personnel or equipment. After 20 minutes of careful observation, Walsh identified the observation post. It was positioned in a natural depression among the rocks, camouflaged with local materials, and positioned to provide excellent concealment while maintaining clear fields of observation. 2 enemy personnel were visible along with radio equipment and what appeared to be a laser rangefinder for directing mortar fire. Morrison studied the target through his own optics, assessing the tactical situation and considering their options for approach and assault. The position was well defended by natural terrain features, but it appeared to have only 2 occupants and limited security measures against ground assault. Standard 2-man observation team, Morrison concluded. They're focused on their mission of directing fires against the base, so they're probably not expecting ground assault from this direction. Garcia examined potential approach routes to the observation post, identifying covered and concealed avenues that would allow them to close within effective range without being detected. The rocky terrain offered multiple options, but each route presented its own challenges and risks. "We can approach from the northwest using that series of boulders for cover," Garcia suggested. "It would put us within 50 meters of their position without requiring us to cross any open ground." Maria studied the suggested approach route, comparing it with her knowledge of the terrain from her hiking experiences. "Be careful of loose rock on that approach. There's a section about halfway up where the footing is unstable. I've seen rock slide in that area during my hikes." Morrison incorporated Maria's terrain knowledge into his tactical planning, adjusting the approach route to avoid the unstable areas while maintaining concealment from enemy observation. Her familiarity with local conditions was proving to be as valuable as intelligence gathered through technical means. The assault plan was relatively simple in concept, but would require precise execution. Morrison and Garcia would conduct the actual assault on the observation post, while Walsh provided overwatch and security from a supporting position. Maria would remain with Walsh, ready to assist with navigation or communication as needed. As the SEALs prepared their equipment for the assault, Maria found herself checking and rechecking her own gear. The weight of the body armor and helmet felt familiar now, and she had developed confidence in moving across difficult terrain while carrying the additional equipment. Morrison conducted a final brief with the team, reviewing the assault plan and confirming each person's responsibilities. The mission was straightforward: neutralize the enemy observation post, capture or destroy their equipment, and withdraw safely to the base. Success would significantly reduce the accuracy of enemy mortar fire, giving the base defenders much-needed relief until the arrival of reinforcements. Walsh moved to his overwatch position, establishing a covered location where he could observe the approach route and the target area. His role was critical for identifying any additional enemy forces that might respond to the assault and for providing covering fire if the withdrawal became contested. Morrison and Garcia began their approach to the observation post, moving carefully through the boulder field while maintaining visual contact with each other. Their movements were deliberate and controlled, taking advantage of every available piece of cover while advancing steadily toward their objective. Maria watched through binoculars as the two SEALs approached the enemy position. The professionalism and skill evident in their movement was impressive, but she found herself holding her breath as they closed the final distance to the observation post. The next few minutes would determine the success or failure of the entire mission. The assault itself was swift and decisive. Morrison and Garcia approached the observation post from two different directions, using hand signals to coordinate their final approach. When they moved, it was with the sudden violence and precision that characterized elite special operations forces. Both enemy personnel were neutralized before they could react or alert their commanders to the assault. Morrison immediately secured their radio equipment, while Garcia collected intelligence materials and conducted a rapid search of the position for additional threats or valuable information. Within 5 minutes of the initial assault, the observation post had been completely neutralized. The enemy radio equipment was destroyed, eliminating their ability to direct accurate mortar fire against the base. Documents and maps recovered from the position provided valuable intelligence about enemy positions and planned operations. Walsh reported the successful completion of the mission to the base through his radio, while Morrison and Garcia prepared for withdrawal from the area. The mission had achieved its primary objective, but they remained in enemy territory with potentially hostile forces in the surrounding area. The withdrawal from a ridge proved to be more challenging than the approach had been. Enemy forces elsewhere in the area had heard the brief firefight at the observation post and were beginning to respond to investigate the source of the gunfire. Radio intercepts indicated that enemy commanders were organizing search teams to locate and engage the assault force. Morrison made the decision to use the alternative withdrawal route that Maria had identified earlier. The secondary trail would take them away from the most likely enemy response routes, while providing concealed movement back toward friendly lines. As they began their movement down the backside of the ridge system, the immediate effects of their successful mission became apparent. The enemy mortar fire that had been systematically targeting the base facilities became sporadic and inaccurate. Without their forward observers to provide precise targeting data, the enemy gunners were forced to engage area targets with much reduced effectiveness. Maria led the way down the unfamiliar trail, using her understanding of local terrain features to identify the safest route through areas she had never personally explored. The trail was rougher and more difficult than the route they had used for their approach, but it offered excellent concealment from pursuing enemy forces. The descent took nearly 2 hours, with multiple security halts to assess their situation and confirm that they were not being followed by enemy search teams. Radio intercepts indicated that enemy forces were focusing their search efforts on the area around the observation post rather than attempting to pursue the assault force. As they approached the base perimeter from an unexpected direction, Morrison coordinated with friendly forces to ensure they would not be engaged by their own defensive positions. The base's security was understandably heightened due to the ongoing assault, and approaching sentries needed clear identification to avoid tragic accidents. The base commander met them personally as they crossed back through the defensive perimeter. The successful elimination of the observation post had already had a measurable effect on enemy capabilities, and the intelligence materials recovered from the position were providing valuable insights into enemy plans and dispositions. Maria found herself being debriefed alongside the SEALs, her knowledge of local terrain and her observations during the mission considered valuable intelligence for future operations. The transformation from civilian contractor to combat participant felt surreal, but the professional respect shown by the military personnel made it clear that her contributions had been significant. As the day wore on, the effects of eliminating the observation post became increasingly apparent. Enemy mortar fire decreased dramatically in both frequency and accuracy, allowing base personnel to move more freely and to conduct resupply operations for isolated defensive positions. Medical evacuation flights were able to land and depart without the precision enemy fire that had previously made such operations extremely hazardous. The relief force arrived 6 hours later, approaching the base from multiple directions while engaging enemy forces that were already beginning to withdraw from their positions. The loss of their fire direction capability had significantly reduced their effectiveness, making their positions untenable against a coordinated counterattack. By evening, the base was secure and enemy forces had withdrawn from the immediate area. The successful defense of Firebase Phoenix had been achieved through the combined efforts of all base personnel, but the elimination of the enemy observation post had been a critical factor in reducing casualties and maintaining defensive effectiveness. Morrison approached Maria as she prepared to return to her quarters after the extended debriefing sessions. The adrenaline of combat was beginning to wear off, replaced by exhaustion and the emotional processing of everything that had happened during the day. Maria, what you did today went far beyond anything anyone could have expected from a civilian contractor, Morrison said. Your knowledge of the local terrain and your willingness to take risks to help the mission succeed probably saved lives today. Maria felt a complex mixture of emotions as she reflected on the day's events. Pride in her contributions to the mission's success was tempered by the sobering realization of how close they had come to disaster at multiple points throughout the operation. Chief, I just did what my father taught me was right, she replied. When people are depending on you, you step up and do whatever needs to be done. Morrison nodded, recognizing the military values that Roberto Santos had instilled in his daughter. Your father would definitely be proud. But I want you to understand that what happened today is going to have consequences that go beyond this base. The comment puzzled Maria, who assumed that the successful mission would simply return her to her normal routine of cleaning and maintenance duties. She had not considered that her participation in special operations activities might fundamentally change her status within the military community. Morrison explained that her actions during the combat situation would be documented and reported through official channels. Her demonstrated capabilities under extreme stress, combined with her tactical knowledge and proven reliability, had attracted attention from higher levels of command. There may be opportunities for you to contribute to military operations in ways that go beyond your current position, Morrison said carefully. But those are decisions that will be made by people with much higher rank than mine. As Maria, finally, returned to her quarters, she found it difficult to reconcile the familiar surroundings with the extraordinary events of the day. Her small room, with its simple furniture and personal items, seemed unchanged despite everything that had happened. Yet she knew that she herself had been fundamentally changed by the experience. The successful defense of Firebase Phoenix had demonstrated the importance of individual initiative and specialized knowledge in military operations. Maria's transition from civilian contractor to combat participant represented a unique case study in how non-military personnel could contribute to mission success under extreme circumstances. As she prepared for sleep, Maria reflected on the path that had brought her to this point. Her father's training, her decision to work in a military environment, and her commitment to supporting the mission had all contributed to her ability to perform under combat conditions. The quiet cleaning job that had seemed so routine just that morning had revealed capabilities and potential that she had never previously recognized in herself. The base gradually returned to normal operational status over the following days, but the effects of the successful defense continued to reverberate through military command structures. The innovative use of tunnel systems for tactical movement and the integration of civilian contractors with specialized knowledge into combat operations had proven effective under real-world conditions. Maria's role in the mission's success had not gone unnoticed by military leaders who were constantly seeking ways to maximize operational effectiveness in challenging environments. Her unique combination of local knowledge, tactical awareness, and proven performance under stress represented exactly the kind of capability that special operations forces valued most highly. The stage was set for opportunities that would take Maria far beyond the cleaning and maintenance duties that had originally brought her to Firebase Phoenix. The next phase of her journey would test her abilities in new and unexpected ways, building on the foundation established during her first taste of combat operations. 3 weeks after the successful defense of Firebase Phoenix, Maria Santos found herself sitting in a secure briefing room at Bagram Air Base, facing a panel of senior military officers who represented some of the most elite units in the American Armed Forces. The contrast with her former life as a cleaning contractor felt surreal, but the events at Firebase Phoenix had opened doors she had never imagined possible. Colonel Sarah Mitchell, the commanding officer of the Joint Special Operations Command Element in Afghanistan, led the briefing. Mitchell was a career special operations officer whose reputation for identifying and developing unconventional capabilities was legendary throughout the special operations community. Ms. Santos, your actions at Firebase Phoenix have generated considerable interest at very high levels of command. Colonel Mitchell began, studying a thick folder containing Maria's background investigation and performance reports. Chief Morrison's recommendation carries significant weight in our community, and his assessment of your capabilities suggests you possess skills that could be valuable in ongoing operations. Maria had spent the previous 2 weeks undergoing intensive background investigations, psychological evaluations, and preliminary assessments that probed every aspect of her life and character. The process had been thorough and occasionally invasive, but she understood the necessity of such measures when dealing with sensitive military operations. The briefing room contained representatives from multiple special operations units, including Army Special Forces, Navy SEALs, and Air Force Special Operations Command. Their presence indicated that whatever opportunity was being discussed had implications that extended far beyond a single service branch. We have a unique situation developing in the tribal regions along the Pakistani border, Colonel Mitchell continued. Our conventional intelligence capabilities are limited in these areas due to cultural and linguistic barriers, but we have identified several high-value targets who require direct action missions to neutralize. Major Robert Shun, representing Army Special Forces, took over the briefing to provide more specific details about the operational environment. The target area was characterized by extremely difficult terrain, hostile local populations, and the presence of sophisticated enemy forces with extensive local support networks. What makes this situation particularly challenging is the need for extended reconnaissance and surveillance operations in an environment where our normal intelligence gathering methods are compromised, Major Chin explained. We need personnel who can blend into local conditions while providing accurate tactical intelligence for direct action missions. Maria began to understand where the briefing was leading. Her demonstrated ability to operate in challenging environments, combined with her tactical knowledge and proven performance under stress, had identified her as a potential asset for operations requiring unconventional approaches. Captain Lisa Rodriguez from Air Force Special Operations provided additional context about the specific missions being planned. The targets were high-ranking enemy commanders who had established sophisticated safe houses in areas where conventional military operations would be extremely difficult to conduct without significant civilian casualties. These targets have learned to exploit our operational limitations, Captain Rodriguez explained. They position themselves in areas where direct assault would require extensive preparation that gives them time to escape, or where the collateral damage would be unacceptable from a strategic perspective. The solution being proposed was the development of a specialized reconnaissance capability that could operate in these restricted environments for extended periods while providing real-time intelligence for precision strikes. The personnel selected for these missions would require exceptional survival skills, cultural adaptability, and the ability to operate independently under extreme stress. Colonel Mitchell outlined the training program that would be required to prepare selected personnel for these specialized missions. The curriculum would include advanced survival training, cultural immersion programs, specialized weapons and communications training, and extensive practice in covert movement and surveillance techniques. This is not a decision to be made lightly, Colonel Mitchell emphasized. The training program is physically and mentally demanding, and the operational missions would involve significant personal risk. However, the potential contribution to national security objectives is substantial. Maria found herself considering possibilities that had never entered her mind during her years as a civilian contractor. The opportunity to serve her country in a capacity that utilized her unique skills and background was appealing, but she understood the magnitude of commitment that would be required. The military personnel in the briefing room had clearly done extensive research into her background and capabilities. They were aware of her father's military service, her own educational background, and her demonstrated performance during the Firebase Phoenix incident. Their confidence in her potential was evident in their willingness to invest in her specialized training. Major Chun addressed the practical aspects of the program, including the duration of training, the location of operations, and the support structure that would be available to personnel assigned to these missions. The program represented a significant investment in developing capabilities that were not available through conventional military training programs. The initial training phase would last approximately 6 months and would take place at various facilities specializing in the skills you would need to develop, Major Chin explained. Following successful completion of training, you would be assigned to a small team conducting reconnaissance operations in support of high-priority direct action missions. Captain Rodriguez emphasized the voluntary nature of the program and the ability to withdraw at any point during the training process. The military was seeking individuals who were genuinely committed to the mission rather than people who might be motivated solely by adventure or financial incentives. We want people who understand what they're getting into and who have the personal motivation to see it through when conditions become difficult, Captain Rodriguez said. The operational environment is unforgiving, and there's no room for personnel who aren't completely committed to mission success. Maria asked about the specific skills that would be required and how her current capabilities would translate to the operational environment being described. The answer revealed that her father's training had provided an unusually solid foundation for the specialized requirements of covert reconnaissance operations. Her understanding of tactical movement, weapons handling, and survival skills have been supplemented by years of working in challenging environments while maintaining situational awareness and adapting to changing conditions. The combination of technical skills and practical experience had prepared her for challenges that would overwhelm many candidates. Colonel Mitchell provided examples of the types of missions that would be assigned to personnel completing the specialized training program. The scenarios range from simple observation and reporting assignments to complex operations requiring weeks of independent operation in hostile territory. In some cases, you might be inserted into an area weeks before a direct action mission to establish surveillance of target locations and to identify patterns of behavior that would inform the tactical planning process, Colonel Mitchell explained. In other situations, you might be required to conduct real-time reconnaissance during ongoing operations to provide updated intelligence to assault teams. The briefing included discussion of the support structure that would be available during operations, including communication protocols, emergency extraction procedures, and medical support for personnel operating in remote locations. The military had learned from previous experiences about the importance of comprehensive support for personnel conducting high-risk operations. Maria was given detailed information about the training locations and the specific curriculum that would be required to develop the necessary capabilities. The program included training at military facilities throughout the United States, with specialized instruction from some of the most experienced personnel in the special operations community. The survival training component would take place at facilities known for their realistic and demanding programs. Students would learn advanced techniques for operating in various climatic and terrain conditions while avoiding detection by hostile forces. The training would push physical and mental capabilities to their limits while building confidence in extreme situations. Cultural training would involve extensive study of languages, customs, and social structures in areas where operations were likely to occur. Students would learn to modify their behavior and appearance to blend into local populations while maintaining the observational skills necessary for intelligence gathering. Weapons and communications training would focus on specialized equipment designed for covert operations. Students would master weapon systems that could be easily concealed and transported, as well as communication equipment that could operate reliably under adverse conditions while avoiding detection by enemy forces. The final phase of training would involve realistic exercises that combined all elements of the curriculum in scenarios that closely replicated actual operational conditions. Students would be evaluated on their ability to plan and execute complex missions while adapting to unexpected challenges and maintaining operational security. Colonel Mitchell concluded the briefing by emphasizing that the decision to participate in the program was entirely Maria's choice and that there would be no negative consequences regardless of her decision. The military was seeking volunteers who were genuinely motivated to serve in this capacity rather than people who might feel pressured to accept an assignment they were not comfortable with. Take whatever time you need to consider this opportunity, Colonel Mitchell said. If you decide to proceed, we would begin the preliminary training phase within 2 weeks. If you decide it's not right for you, your service at Firebase Phoenix has already contributed significantly to our mission success. Maria requested time to consider the proposal and to discuss it with people whose judgment she trusted. The opportunity represented a dramatic change from her current life, but it also offered the chance to serve her country in a way that would honor her father's memory and utilize the skills he had taught her. Over the following week, Maria consulted with Morrison and other personnel who had worked with her during the Firebase Phoenix incident. Their unanimous opinion was that she possessed the capabilities and character traits necessary for success in the specialized program, but they emphasized that the final decision had to be based on her personal commitment to the mission. Morrison provided particularly valuable perspective based on his years of experience in special operations. He explained that successful personnel in these assignments are distinguished not by physical capabilities or technical skills, but by mental resilience and the ability to maintain focus and determination when conditions became extremely difficult. The training will push you harder than anything you've experienced, Morrison explained. But if you can get through it, you'll have capabilities that very few people possess, and you'll be contributing to missions that can't be accomplished any other way. Maria also considered the potential impact on her personal life and long-term career plans. The specialized training and operational assignments would require a significant commitment of time and would involve risks that went far beyond those associated with conventional military service. However, she also recognized that the opportunity was unique and that her combination of background, skills, and demonstrated performance had created circumstances that were unlikely to be repeated. The chance to serve in a capacity that fully utilized her capabilities while contributing to important national security objectives was compelling. After a week of careful consideration, Maria made her decision. She contacted Colonel Mitchell to inform her that she was prepared to accept the assignment and to begin the specialized training program. The response was immediate and positive, with instructions to report for preliminary training within 10 days. The transition from civilian contractor to specialized military operative happened with surprising speed. Maria's possessions were packed and shipped to a secure storage facility. Her contractual obligations were transferred to other personnel, and she was provided with initial equipment and documentation for her new role. The preliminary training phase began at a remote facility in Nevada, where Maria joined 11 other candidates who had been selected for the specialized program. The group included personnel from various military branches, as well as civilians with specialized skills and backgrounds that had attracted military attention. The training environment was designed to replicate the physical and mental stresses that personnel would encounter during actual operations. Students were subjected to sleep deprivation, physical exhaustion, and psychological pressure while attempting to master complex skills and procedures. Maria's background had prepared her well for the physical demands of the training, but the mental and emotional challenges were more significant than she had anticipated. The instructors deliberately created situations of uncertainty and stress to identify students who could maintain performance when conditions became extremely difficult. The survival training component took place in various locations representing different operational environments. Students learned to operate in desert conditions, mountain terrain, jungle environments, and urban settings while avoiding detection and maintaining mission effectiveness. Maria discovered that her years of working in challenging environments had developed mental resilience that served her well during the most difficult phases of training. Her ability to remain focused and continue performing when physically exhausted and emotionally stressed distinguished her from some candidates who possessed superior physical capabilities. The cultural training phase involved intensive language instruction as well as detailed study of social customs and behavioral patterns in areas where operations were likely to occur. Maria found this aspect of the training particularly challenging, as it required her to modify deeply ingrained behavioral patterns while maintaining natural and convincing interactions with local populations. Weapons training focused on specialized systems designed for covert operations, including suppressed firearms, improvised weapons, and explosive devices that could be easily concealed and transported. The instruction emphasized precision and reliability rather than firepower, reflecting the operational requirements for personnel who might need to engage targets without alerting nearby enemy forces. Communications training involved mastering equipment that could operate reliably under adverse conditions while avoiding detection by sophisticated enemy monitoring systems. Students learned to use various communication methods, including satellite systems, burst transmissions, and covert signaling techniques. The culminating phase of training involved realistic exercises conducted in environments that closely replicated actual operational conditions. Students were required to plan and execute complex missions while adapting to unexpected challenges, and maintaining operational security throughout extended periods of independent operation. Maria successfully completed the specialized training program after 6 months of intensive instruction. Her performance had been consistently strong across all aspects of the curriculum, and her instructors expressed confidence in her readiness for operational assignments. The graduation ceremony was deliberately low-key, reflecting the classified nature of the program and the operational security requirements for personnel who would be conducting sensitive missions. Family members were not invited, and the achievement was marked by simple acknowledgement of successful completion rather than public recognition. Maria was assigned to a small team tasked with conducting reconnaissance operations in support of high-priority direct action missions along the Afghan-Pakistani border. The team included 4 other graduates of the specialized training program, each bringing unique skills and backgrounds to the group. Their first operational assignment involved establishing surveillance of a compound where intelligence indicated a high-value target was conducting meetings with subordinate commanders. The mission would require Maria and her teammates to operate independently for several weeks while gathering detailed intelligence about the target's activities and security arrangements. As Maria prepared for her first operational mission, she reflected on the journey that had brought her from cleaning floors at Firebase Phoenix to serving as a specialized reconnaissance operative. Her father's training and her own determination had prepared her for challenges she had never imagined possible. The mission ahead would test every skill she had developed during the intensive training program. Success would contribute to eliminating threats to American forces and interests, while failure could result in capture or death in a remote and hostile environment. Maria felt the weight of responsibility that came with her new role, but she also felt the pride that came from knowing she was serving her country in a capacity that honored her father's memory and utilized the capabilities he had helped her develop. The quiet cleaning job that had brought her to Afghanistan had revealed potential that would now be tested in some of the most challenging operational environments in the world. As her team prepared for insertion into the target area, Maria carried with her the lessons learned at Firebase Phoenix about the importance of determination, adaptability, and commitment to mission success. The skills that had enabled her to guide SEALs through tunnel systems and across hostile terrain would now be applied to missions of even greater complexity and importance. The transformation from civilian contractor to specialized military operative was complete, but Maria understood that her real test would come during actual operations when the training and preparation would be put to use in support of missions that could only be accomplished by personnel with her unique combination of skills and determination. The future held challenges she could not yet imagine, but she was prepared to meet them with the same courage and competence that had brought her to this extraordinary opportunity to serve.